Welcome to the webinar, everybody. We are here another Wednesday, another Lunch and Learn. Today's topic, understanding the link between diabetes and diet. The good news today is it's not going to it's not going to take very long to show you what the link is. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's not rocket science, but the problem is we have an addiction to the problem, and we're going to kind of go through that. But before we really kind of get into what the problem is, we need to understand the issue first and foremost. And the issue is this: we have a weight problem in this country. You've seen this stat multiple times. I mean, we are leading the industrialized world in weight, and we continue to go up. And our children's overweight population continues to rise at an alarming rate, which is scary. But we also have a fat problem. That's right. Our average body fat for men is 28.1% and women is 40%. And when healthy is between 10 and 22% for men and 20 and 32% for women, you can kind of see that we have a serious fat problem, but the biggest issue is we have a diabetes problem. We have 100 plus million Americans that are diabetic or pre-diabetic. That means they are literally walking around every day with diabetes. Most of this, what we're referring to here, is type 2 diabetes, and or they're pre-diabetic, which means you have a glucose score in your blood work between 100 and 125, and you've basically been given that opportunity to correct the issue, correct the problem. But the thing is, do you have the information? Do you have the knowledge? Do you have the ability to understand how to correct the problem? The other thing that I want to point out here is that 28% of people either are diabetic or pre-diabetic and they don't even know it. A lot of this is men because we simply don't go to the doctor the way that we should. We have to take the time to actually go to the doctor, get checked out, have the blood work, get the results, even if they're bad, understand what they are, and understand that there's something we can do about it. And of course, the bigger issue for parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, godparents, I don't care who you are, pay attention to the kiddos. I mean, this rate of diabetes, type 2 diabetes in children is so severe. I mean, it's gone up so much that we don't even call type 2 diabetes adult onset anymore. Now we just call it type 2. It's a sad state of affairs, but here's the biggest issue. 68% of people that are diabetic will die from heart disease or stroke. So let that sit in for a second. I mean, if you have diabetes, don't think that you're just a prescription away from continuing to do what you've always done. What that is the body's first warning sign that, hey, look, there is more on the horizon. Something else is coming. And remember, ladies specifically, 40% of the women, their first sign of heart disease or stroke is the heart attack or stroke that killed them. So keep that in mind. But right now, where we're looking at, if we continue on the pace that we're on, in 2050, the CDC is estimating that we will have 100 plus Americans that will be type 2 diabetic. That's right. So right now we have 100 million plus that are diabetic or pre-diabetic. So we have a lot that are in that pre-diabetic stage, something that could be done about it. But by 2050, we are literally going to have 1/3 of the U.S. population walking around with type 2 diabetes on a daily basis. So what does that mean? Well, what if I told you this? You lose a half a year of life expectancy for every year you have type 2 diabetes. Another way of saying that is you are basically aging at 1.5 years for every year that you live with type 2 diabetes. So instead of thinking about, let me regulate this with a pill, let me regulate this with something else, why don't we try to reverse it? Why don't we understand what causes it? Why don't we try to prevent it from happening in the first place? Because it is in our control. Type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle type disease. It is something that, yes, genetically you can be predisposed to. Trust me, I know. I have a large family history of type 2 diabetes that I fight on a constant basis thanks to the genetics that I was blessed with. But the idea is still the same. It's still within my purview and my control to do something about it. I just have to be very conscious about it. And that's what today is about. Today is all about giving you some information and some resources and some tools so that you can be more aware. If you have these types of issues, if you're struggling with these types of things, that you can actually have the power to do something about it. So let's ask this, what has been linked as the number one influencer for risk of developing diabetes? When I ask this question, a lot of people will think, well, it has to be obesity, or it could just be the calories that we're consuming on a daily basis, or maybe it's alcohol. These are usually the things that people, link directly to diabetes. That if you're eating a lot, or if you're obese, or you drink a lot of alcohol, those are basically the main contributors to diabetes. The reality is none of those are it. The number one influencer, hands down, is sugar. Sugar consumption is by far the number one influencer of the risk of developing diabetes. Your sugar consumption on a daily basis will directly impact whether or not you have and or will develop diabetes in your lifetime. More importantly, if you are predisposed, in other words, you have a genetic predisposition to type 2, in other words, your family history has a long lineage of people with type 2 diabetes, or even type 1 diabetes if they were born with it, you have to be super careful in your consumption, because the idea is here, this can increase your risk exponentially. So let's learn about sugar. We have to understand, if we're really talking about diet and diabetes, sugar has got to be the topic. But the biggest thing is we have to learn what it means. So this is Sugar 101. One teaspoon is 4 grams. So if you're looking at the back of a label, you're reading a nutritional facts label, you need to understand that 4 grams is 1 teaspoon. Okay, 1 teaspoon is 1 serving. I know I'm having to do this. It would be a lot easier if we taught the metric system in our schools in the U.S. rather than the empirical system and then expect people to understand the metric system. But this is the simplistic form of it. 1 teaspoon, 4 grams, 16 calories. Ladies and children should consume no more than 6 teaspoons a day. That's 24 grams, okay, if we're keeping count, or 100 calories. Men, you get up to 9. We're a little bit bigger, so as a result, we can consume a little bit more and still be okay. But it's 100 calories of the diet or 150 calories of the diet, depending on if you're a man or woman. That's what's recommended by the American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association, and a lot of others, including the American Medical Association. So this is pretty well established. Where are we, though? If kids are only supposed to be having 6 teaspoons a day, where are we with our children? And forget the adults for a second, but what are our children consuming on a daily basis? Little girls are averaging 20 teaspoons. I'm just going to let that set in for a second. 20 teaspoons, more than 3 times the amount they should have in a given day. Want to know why 1/3 of our children are overweight? Here's a big contributor. But boys, it's a lot worse. It's 27 teaspoons. This is the average. This is the average child in the United States is consuming 3 to almost 5 times the amount of sugar that they should have in a given day, every single day of their life. You want to know why the diabetes rate is exponentially high in this country? You want to know why it's out of control? You want to know why it jumped in children so badly that we dropped the term adult onset diabetes? You want to know these? I mean, here it is. You're looking at it. This is our drug. This is our drug of choice. We don't have a war on this drug, but man, do we need one. If you're addicted to drugs, we send you to rehab. If you're addicted to sugar, we send you to a weight management program. It's insane. We have to understand that sugar is just as addictive as cocaine, and this is an addiction that we have to address, especially since we're addicting our children to this stuff, and we don't even realize we're doing it. Here's the numbers for real. We have 1/3 of our kids are overweight. You've seen that, but 1/6 of our kids are obese. These numbers are getting worse, and they're getting worse fast. In fact, in the last 32 years, roughly, obesity has risen 3x. That's right. In the last 30 years, it has increased 3 times the amount it just was in 1985. The way that the average kid looked in 1985 versus the way the average kid looks today is much, much, much different. We've got to change this, guys. We have to do something. And in fact, if you have an overweight child, guess what? They're 80% more likely to be overweight when they're adults. That's just the numbers. That's just the way that it works. I mean, so if we can get kids to understand that they need to live a healthy lifestyle when they're young, and we as parents stop telling them what to do and start showing them what to do, we can prevent what is going to be a lifelong struggle with weight, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, metabolic syndrome, you name it. But it all starts with what they're eating on a daily basis. So empty calories, added sugars, and solid fats make up what percentage of kids' diets? 40%. That's right. 40% of a child's diet in this country is made up of added sugars, solid fats, and this is where 50% of it comes from. Sodas, juices, some type of fruit juice of some type, pizza, ice cream, baked goods, cookies, cakes, things of that nature, and milk. Those are your 6 culprits. Those 6 things right there are what are 50% of the problem that we have in this country. These are the things right here that people are absolutely addicted to, can't live without. Doesn't matter what they're diagnosed with, doesn't matter what they're told by their physician, doesn't matter what they hear on webinars like this. They are addicted to these things, and they are drawn to them because that dopamine that's coming out of the hypothalamus, which is triggered by our pleasure center, is so overwhelming that we just have to have it. We can't get away from it, and it's leading to our diabetic problem that we have. But here's the bigger issue. Americans consume more calories from this ingredient than any other source. Can't imagine what it is, but here's the thing. It's not sugar. Most people think it is, but it's not. It's actually high fructose corn syrup. An invention that our wonderful food scientist came up with of a way to make things even sweeter. A way to convert something that's good, which is basically corn, into a high sugar like product that in the body is basically converted the same way that sugar is. In fact, if you look at the consumption of high fructose corn syrup in this country from the 1970s to 2010, basically as the rate of use went up, so did our obesity rate. Almost in line, almost growing in line with the use of high fructose corn syrup. As we continue to eat processed foods, as we continue to use time as our reason why we don't cook, as we continue to use time for the reason that we eat processed foods and fast foods and stop and goes and all these other wonderful things that are out there, what we end up with is this epidemic. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's in the food. It's there. It has no nutritional value. It's called an empty calorie. That's right. It has zero nutritional value. So the body does not get any benefit from this, but yet it makes up a large portion of our daily diet. In fact, if you look just kind of at the percentages, it actually has more calories. 1 teaspoon of high fructose corn syrup actually has more calories in it than 1 teaspoon of sugar. And on a regular basis, we are consuming 35 pounds of this a year, and the number is rising. That's right. The number is rising. We're consuming 35 pounds or 127,000 plus calories. What does that mean? The average person is consuming 349 calories per day. That's 14% of our daily diet of 2,500 calories, which is way too many to begin with, but it basically is 14% of our daily intake that Americans consume on a daily basis. 349 calories from something that does not provide your body with any nutritional value, but we are addicted to it. We need to understand what it is. We need to understand how to avoid it, but here's the best part. Here's the kicker. It's not even on a label. See, if you look over here on the sugars side, high fructose corn syrup, guess what, is not even listed in the sugars. Now, I want to make sure people understand this. It is not listed as a sugar because the sugar is basically nothing more than the white powdery stuff that's listed right here. See, now, come 2018, come next year, we're finally going to get something called added sugars. And when we put the added sugars on there, you're going to see the sugar number exponentially increase in a lot of products. The food industry is not happy at all about this added sugars number. And the reason why is because for the first time, these ingredients, these things right here are going to have to be listed for the first time in this category of added sugars. They're actually going to have to tell you that dextrose, fructose, honey, invert sugar, raw sugar, malt syrup, rice syrup, sucrose, xylose, molasses, corn sweetener, all of these things right here that you see are going to finally have to come on to the label as opposed to being a hidden ingredient or part of the other ingredients. All of these things right here are sugar. None of them are required to be listed here. All of them will now be required to be listed here. So what does this mean? Is it really going to make that big of a difference? Well, here's an example. This was the FDA's example of the old label versus the new. So this is the original. You can actually get this from the FDA website. This is the new label. There's a lot of changes. You can see the calories are no longer going to be hidden in small print. You're actually going to get to see them. They're going to do some things with the serving size as well. But right here, if you look at the old one, you'll see sugars at 1 gram. But when you go in here and you have to put the added sugars, guess what? The sugar total jumped to 12. Now, to me, 1 plus 10 equals 11, but somehow in this example, we get to 12. I guess there's a rounding issue going on. But the biggest thing is you're actually going to also get to see your percentage of daily value. You're actually going to see how much sugar is in each one of these products. this is something that is going to change the game for a lot of processed foods. You're going to see some of your foods that you are eating, even if you're diabetic or pre-diabetic, where you think you are doing something well, when you're not reading the other ingredients and you don't understand what these sugars are called, and all you're doing is looking at this right here thinking you're making a good choice. The reality is this is a food that somebody has been consuming thinking that they're doing the right thing, and what ends up happening is instead of 1 gram, which is 1/4 of a serving, they end up with 3 servings on every one of these that they consume. Some of the other things that are going to take place is serving size conversions. So like this one, going from 4 is now going to be 3. That the 12-ounce or 20-ounce bottles are now going to have to be a single serving. No longer will they say a 12-ounce is 1.5 servings and a 20-ounce is 2.5 servings, which they have been doing. It says so they will be, more realistic to reflect how people actually eat them at one time. Well, realistic, I mean, this is a pint of ice cream. A pint of ice cream. Well, I don't know about you, but I mean, I've seen a lot of people with a pint of ice cream. Typically, this is what I would call a single serve. This is what people treat as a single serve, but yet this is now going to be 3 servings instead of the 4 servings that it has been listed. So when you read that nutritional label real fast and you saw it was 200 calories, you're thinking, okay, great. And by the time you look down, it's empty. You're like, okay, well, you don't appreciate or understand that in that wonderful little pint, there are 980 calories, actually, 63 grams of fat, 38.5 saturated fat, 77 grams of sugar. Again, if you want to do the conversion, divide that by 4, and you'll find out that that's over 19 servings. Remember, ladies, you get 6. Men, you get 9. This is 19. That's quite a few servings. That's almost, a little over 3 days worth for women and a couple of days worth for men. I mean, it's in that one little container. It's insane. Let's be crazy. That's just insane. But we have to get educated. I hope this has helped. I really do. Diabetes and diet is not a complicated issue. It's something that's easy to understand. It is a direct link to, diabetes, especially type 2, is a direct link to our hand-to-mouth disease, what our hand finding our mouth way too often with the wrong thing, but specifically related to our sugar consumption. So be aware, educate yourself, know what these terms mean, and watch out. And if you are living with prediabetes or you're living with type 2 diabetes, by all means, get educated. Don't rely on things that you read on the internet. Don't rely on a bunch of stuff, because there's a lot of false facts out there about things. Educate yourself. Let's be constant learners. I mean, we have to be vigilant about our own health and how our body works and what our genetics are and what our predispositions are, and do something about it. So you want to learn more about IDLife. You want to learn more why we do these healthy hours. You want to learn more about who we are as a company. Then I encourage you to plug in on Monday nights. Every Monday night, 8:30, same place you are right now. We do a healthy hour with our CEO or a guest speaker who's going to talk about IDLife, what we're doing, why we exist, and what the health and fitness movement is behind IDLife. Of course, you want to see some people that are getting the results from simple solutions to very complex problems. Go to myidlifestory.com and read all about it. I mean, these are people that basically decided, what, enough is enough. I'm not going to do weight loss anymore. I'm going to do fat loss, muscle gain. And if you don't understand what that means, go to myidlifestory.com and find out. Listen to these people. Read their stories. Find out what they're about. These are people that took years trying to do something and continuously were on that yo-yo. But yet, when they found IDLife, found an easy way to basically change some things in their life and make those permanent modifications to the way that they thought. And those thoughts led to a permanent change in the way that they looked. We also have some challenges going on right now. Those challenges will also get you cash. They give you the ability to earn money by simply being a participant in our Ultimate IDLife Experience contest. So if you want more details, go to My IDLife Story and find out and have your chance of getting a piece of that $35,000. If you want to join us in Vegas, we're going to be there September 15th through the 17th at Planet Hollywood. I would highly encourage, if you want to be there with us, that you do it fast. This thing is almost sold out, and hey, it's Vegas. Do you really need another excuse? Come learn about health and wellness and spend some time in a beautiful city like this and have some fun. All kinds of events going on that weekend, even beyond IDLife. So, come join us, spend some time with us, learn some things, and then, of course, have some fun in the city. Next week, we're going to address a topic, to soy or not to soy, the facts about soy in your diet. I will prepare you that a lot of people are black and white on this issue. That means they either think that it's a positive or they think that it's a negative. And like most things, it's not all bad and it's not all good. So, if you want to learn more, you want to understand the truth about soy. And what I mean by the truth, I mean what the science says. Then by all means plug in next week and join us for 11:30 Central Time for another webinar next week, to soy or not to soy. This is Mark Bennett on behalf of IDLife. Until then, I look forward to talking to you again.